Sue, no Jay Skelly or Dan Shaw today. Brian should be.
Then I'll call together the personnel committee.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. And we have a quorum, I believe. Yes. I'm not sure about the finance committee though.
I'm here for the finance committee, Frank Thomas.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that we have a quorum. We have Mr. Bruno and Ms. Bramer and myself.
You have Mr. McDevitt.
Chairman Thomas.
Mr. McDevitt also.
Chairman Thomas, I'm also on the call if you need me to make quorum. It's Rachel.
Ms. Bramer, you have a quorum for both committees for Warren County.
Okay, so I'll call the finance committee to order, and we have to approve the minutes. No? Okay, we're good.
All right, so we're on. I'm gonna go mute.
Okay. Sue, do you want us to go ahead and get started?
Yes, I think Brian is trying to get on. So regarding the finance committee, Matt, do you want to start the
I'm here. I'm the vice
Don't
chair.
put me in charge, Sue. I don't want anything to do with this. Dave's the second in command. You know what? I want to usurp the whole authority here.
But Dave's in the car here, and I'm not sure if he's on or off.
Oh, I just switched. I'm back on. I'm out of the car.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a quorum of finance, Deb? Deborah Hoda, do we have a quorum of finance?
As soon as Brian gets on, you have a quorum.
Okay. Is he in the building or?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll call the finance committee to order, and then he can take over when he jumps on.
Okay. Anne-Marie, would you like me to kick it off here?
Sure. I was going to share the agenda, but you're first on it, Dr. Duffy. So.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. And I'm sure like us, we're a little tired of Zoom. So hopefully our next opportunity to be together will be in person. So, but thank you for so many of you joining us today as we share an update on the college, as well as our 2021-2022 proposed budget for your consideration. So thank you again for joining us. I am going to, as we all do now on Zoom, share my screen. And I just have some, I want to provide you an update on where we are at with the college and some of the exciting things that have been going on. So with that.
I'm with you, finally.
Oh, Brian is here. We can start now.
Well, bring us to order.
Thank you, Brian. We're glad you're here. So of course, the most exciting time of any college is commencement, and we were able to manage a beautiful day, which was important to us. But most importantly, we were able to bring those students and guests who wanted to be in person together here on campus. So. A unique commencement and one for the history books. We delivered it in person, online, and on campus. So we did 3 different ceremonies so that we could keep the numbers small to manage, of course, the health and safety protocols. And I can't say enough great things about how wonderful the day went. In fact, I think many people are hoping we'll continue the tradition of being on campus. And I did have to remind them that it was a beautiful sunny day. We had a tent outside for our guests. If it was snowing or raining, which we all know is very possible in the Adirondacks in early May, that we might have felt differently about it. But regardless, it was a wonderful day. And so I just share a few pictures of our students and guests as we kicked off commencement on May 15th. So a great day for the college and a great day for the students. Just a few accomplishments. Even in a COVID year, we were busy doing the things that we're supposed to do in terms of delivering instruction to our students in our community. And just a few highlights. I think probably the biggest accomplishment any organization had in the last year was remaining safe and healthy. And we were able to do that with and offering limited in-person instruction, particularly for our hands-on classes. And we were able to do that very well. We also received this year a $1.3 million federal grant that expands our services to students in need over 5 years. The nice thing about this particular grant, as long as it continues to be funded by the federal government, which it has for several decades, once you receive this grant, unless you really do not meet your intended outcomes, it's very possible the grant continues, which is not always the case with grants, as you all know. So we're very excited to be able to continue to expand our services to our students in most need. We launched, of course, several virtual services to support student success. Our nursing program received its reaccreditation after a lengthy self-study process over 1.5 years of work, which all accrediting bodies require. And of course, doing it in this environment takes an even extra effort on behalf of our nursing faculty. So we applaud them for achieving reaccreditation by our national accrediting body. We had record-breaking annual giving this year for our foundation. In fact, today is our annual golf tournament where we have a sold-out show, so to speak, and record-breaking sponsorships, which really do help fund our scholarship program. And then we also received a $200,000 grant from the Department of Labor to train IT workers this summer. And so we're kicking that off soon. I want to share with you today our strategic plan that we'll be launching this fall. So I want to just go back a little bit in time. Our last strategic plan, the Adirondack Agenda 2.0, we launched in 2018 and it sunsets this year. So as a campus community over the past year, and some of you participated in our stakeholder session in the fall to provide ideas and thoughts on the direction of the college going forward. But just looking back on some of the highlights that we accomplished over the past 3 years, of course, grants continue to be a major source of funding for us to fund particularly our support services for students. We're very proud of the comprehensive approach now that we have, that we didn't have 5 or 6 years ago, of really attending to the needs of our neediest students. So we've received several grants. You'll see the acronyms up there, but EOP is a state-funded program, which should, again, continue for as long as it's funded at the college. HPOG, which was a specific grant to help those who are studying the health professions. And then TRIO is the new grant that I just mentioned before, the federal grant to, again, extend out support services, kind of that wraparound service model of not only the finances that students may need to attend college, but the academic and the psychosocial supports that students need to be successful. We redesigned our English remediation program called ALP. It's the Accelerated Learning Program, where students simultaneously take some of the remedial work that they have with their credit-bearing course, which reduces the time in remediation for students, which, as you know, and I've reported, especially for those who've been around for a while, that's a major challenge, particularly for community colleges, but even students in general. So trying to come up with new ways to help students be successful, but also acknowledge and recognize the fact that we want to keep them moving and keep their momentum going to completion. Speaking of completion, our Finish in 2 program, which was a new program we launched about 4 years ago, which really speaks to the students that are well prepared to come to college and should finish in 2 years. And we designed a program specific to them to really encourage and offer additional advising services to help make sure those students stay on track, and the outcomes I'll share in a minute. We redesigned our first year experience and are still doing that through our Title III grant, which is a major federal grant received last year. Of course, we opened Adirondack Hall, which all of you, many of you are very intimately aware of. And of course, we again appreciate the support from both of our county sponsors to make that happen. And that specifically helped us to upgrade our nursing program and science classrooms and labs. And we've had an 18% increase in nursing students year over year and a 12% 5-year increase in our nursing enrollment, which we all know is critical for the future of our healthcare profession in our region. We've also had a much more intense and increased focus on workforce development and small business support. And even pre-COVID, we were making very large investments in our technology infrastructure to provide more services to students, but also more tools for our faculty and staff to be able to kind of take away some of the manual processing that can bog down their world so that they can free themselves up to attend to the students that they need to in a more one-on-one and personal way. We added several new programs. I highlight here for you the mechatronics program, which was directly created as a result of multiple conversations with our manufacturing community. The Journey Worker Technical Trades Management program that was launched a year ago is an opportunity for those in the trades to complete a business-related program, recognizing that many people in the trades have some sort of their own business, or having that opportunity may actually allow them to create their own business. Our agricultural business program launched a couple years ago. Physical education and fine arts have all had some strong enrollment since we launched them. We provide early college and college and the high school programs to 23 schools and more in Washington and Saratoga County. And that's anything from a course in the high school that's taught, that's our course taught by the high school faculty, to our very successful early college career academies that exist here on campus. And of course, we've been continuing to look at ways to manage our fiscal stability, everything from managing benefits, making some personnel decisions that are never easy, sharing services. We've been launching some new opportunities to share positions with other colleges that are more administrative related, to reduce our expenses, but also be more efficient. We've done extensive studies of our classroom utilization and the way our course schedule aligns, but to ensure that we're using our classroom space efficiently and effectively. We have made some program reductions in those programs that have not been well enrolled, so that we can reinvest resources in the programs that have potential growth, have also been consistently enrolled, and looking at new programs in the future to respond to our community's needs. And then expanding enrollment to new populations. So we've been busy, as you know. And the outcomes, this is just a snapshot of two that particularly our funders like to see, is how are our students doing in terms of their graduation rate. And the blue line here on this graph is SUNY Adirondack, and you can see that we were consistently hovering around the 12-13% who graduate within a 2-year time frame. And of course now we're at 20%, which I know that sounds still small in comparison, but there's lots of reasons students come to us that decide not to graduate. We want to make sure the students that are interested and want to complete a degree with us prior to transfer or workforce, that we're giving them all the attention. And I shared many initiatives that have done that, and the results seem to show. We're very proud of the fact that we now are surpassing our peers. The 3-year graduation rate, even just as exciting, and you can see again, the blue line, we've been kind of pretty consistently in the 20%-ish range, and now have again exceeded our peers on moving more students to graduation, again, through multiple efforts. There's never one thing that makes a difference. It's really a group and collaborative effort, and multiple ways in which we help more students complete. So, as this strategic plan sunsets, we have a lot to be proud of, and now we want to look forward to see what we can take that's worked well, and what improvements do we need to make in the future. And believe it or not, we're entering our 60th year. And a lot to celebrate. This college has served this community very well over the last 60 years, and we intend to continue to serve 60 years more and beyond. So our next strategic plan, we're titling Adirondack 2025, Building a Strong Future. These are our values. These are the things that the campus community came together and said, what are those core values that no matter what we do, we always come back to? the programs and services that we provide, and making sure they meet our values. So those are lifelong learning, education transforms through endless learning. You know that we extend our learning obviously back into the high school, all the way to our senior citizens. And so we know that learning never really ends. Thriving communities. We internally want to be a thriving community so that we can make sure the communities we serve thrive. And of course, probably the core of what community colleges stand for is open access, making sure that higher education is available to anyone, regardless of their background, their goals, their ages, et cetera. And we hold that very strong. So out of all the work that happened over the past 6 or 7 months, we've landed on some very maybe simplistic goals, but very impactful goals to focus our work. Not the day-to-day work necessarily, but that strategic work that we want to make sure to keep the campus moving forward. So those are develop innovative programs and services, expand our enrollment, champion student success, and strengthen our organizational capacity. Within each of those goals, we have a small descriptor to help kind of wrap your head around what they really mean. And, this first one really, a lot of this has been informed, certainly in our experiences in COVID. Not everything COVID has been negative. We've learned a lot about what our students need, how they learn, how we can be and provide more flexible opportunities for students to achieve their goals. So we want to continue that momentum. So we'll look at enhancing our program offerings and services to support the diverse learners that we serve through innovative strategies, using technology, of course, and flexible scheduling and delivery methods. Our next goal is about expanding enrollment. As you know, enrollment has been contracting not only at SUNY Adirondack, but across the nation at community colleges. And so enrollment matters for us for a lot of reasons, not only to meet our mission, but of course that is a source of revenue. And so when enrollment goes down, it makes our fiscal stability a bit more tenuous. So we want to be very strategic and intentional about looking for new student populations to expand our credit and our non-credit enrollment and ensure that we're investing in completion strategies that create equitable outcomes. So even though that graduation rate is exciting and that's good progress for the college, when we start disaggregating data and looking at populations that have typically been marginalized in education, there are gaps, and we need to make sure that we're attending to those gaps. Of course, student success is very important to us, and how do we continue to create and promote deeper partnerships with our businesses, our educational community that ensure that students are successful in transfer or employment, whichever they choose. And then finally, how do we ensure that our organization is strong? We want to increase the racial and ethnic diversity of our employees to better match the student population that we serve. We want to improve our investments in employee development. To keep up with the changing times, we need to continue to reinvest in our employees and also attend to continuing that work and streamlining our administrative work so that we can free up resources to invest in instruction. So that's our strategic plan and what we plan to be focused on in the coming years. And so I just want to shift my attention a little bit to just kind of where we're at today. Our fall enrollment, which you'll hear its relation, of course, to the budget. We have, of course, had a continued decline of enrollment. And I like to kind of talk about the triple whammy that we've experienced over the last several years. You all know that the demographic shift has been continuing to decline, not only in New York, but in the Northeast and much of the northern part of the country. And so small schools get smaller, and so there's just less of a high school population than there was. At the same time, we've had a growing economy once we came out of the recession several years back. As the economy got better, as employment became more available, less people go back to school. And then, of course, this year, COVID happened. So, and unfortunately, COVID has impacted our most vulnerable community. And that vulnerable community is who we serve in a very large proportion, not only at SUNY Adirondack, but across the nation. So we have some things to recover from. And doesn't mean that we're slowing down. It doesn't mean that we're not putting all of our attention and resources into enrollment, but we do have external influencers that to some degree are beyond our control. So for our projection going forward, we are pretty conservative on our enrollment projection for the fall. This year's numbers were very low. We experienced a pretty big hit in our enrollment. And when we looked at the data, it was mostly, if not all, low-income students who have also, again, been adversely and more broadly affected by COVID than others. On the good news column, we have seen an increase in our new student applications since January 1st. So even when we look at the total population, we saw just kind of a delay and no movement in many of our student application numbers in the fall. But since January 1st, our applications are up 35% for the fall. So we're excited about that. We're reopening campus. We now, students can come for in-person accepted student days if they choose. We've got campus tours going again. Of course, we mix that up with virtual options because for many that's convenient. But the point is we're open and ready to be in person in the fall, assuming that everything continues to go in the right direction as it has. A lot more virtual options for students, which we learned through COVID that although some students may not have thrived in remote instruction, many did, and they liked the flexibility. So we want to make sure we have that right balance. We are launching our prison education program this fall with Washington Correctional Facility, and it looks as if we will meet our targeted number of starting with a cohort of, I think it's 20 students, which is exciting. Our Qatar partnership continues to advance, and there's lots of movement. We'll be serving at least 60 students come fall. Our athletic recruiting, we've got a very strong group of coaches and opportunities to really leverage athletics as a part of our recruitment strategy, and some new advertising and marketing campaigns. And I want to just take 1 minute to show you our new commercial. So, and then the only other thing I wanted to update you on, of course, no meeting would be complete without talking a little bit about COVID and its relation to fall planning. In the academic year 2021, we conducted over 10,000 tests on campus, and out of those tests, we only had 9 cases that were out of our surveillance testing, and 35, it probably was a little higher by the end of the year, but very low case count, which we're very proud of, as I said at the top of the meeting. As we look forward to fall 21, we will be returning to, returning primarily to in-person. I just saw that, primarily in person, but making sure we have a mix of options. You've probably read that SUNY and CUNY will be mandating the vaccine if the vaccines are have the full approval of the FDA. So we're anxiously awaiting for that. But we are, of course, communicating with students that we strongly encourage people to be vaccinated. We're doing student surveys to see what the rate is of vaccination, and we just are in the middle of an employee survey and we'll have the results back, but we think that many of our employees are vaccinated. And so we're excited about being able to bring people back safely. And of course, like we've all learned, the protocols continue to change over time. So I use this image as the light at the end of the tunnel. It's been an interesting year for all of us, for sure, but SUNY Adirondack is in good stead, and we're continuing to do the great things that we know you want for your community as much as we do. So with that, I'll stop and answer any questions before I turn it back to Anne Marie. These are those awkward moments on Zoom where you're just not sure, but I'm assuming silence means okay, keep moving forward. But we're happy to answer questions along the way. So Anne Marie, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. I'm going to share my screen as well. Too many things open. Okay, can everyone see the budget book? Okay, I see Chris nodding yes, so thank you very much. So again, thank you for the opportunity to present our proposed budget to you. This budget was approved by our Board of Trustees at their meeting last Thursday, And as usual, many thanks to my team, Eric and Lisa, the president, staff, and the whole college community who helped us put this budget together for your consideration. Oops, my pages aren't working. The marketing department helped us to highlight several of our alumni in this year's budget book. We have Christina Hanchett from Schuylerville. She owns the Juice and Jar restaurant in Glens Falls. Many of us have probably stopped in there. Donovan Miller from Glens Falls is a manager in training at the Marriott in Saranac Lake. And we have Drew, Kayla, Dr. Jeffrey Merrigan, and our own Jason Curl and the Warren County District Attorney as our alumni. The executive summary of the budget, our 21-22 proposed operating budget totals $30,464,646. I've said that a number of times so far this year. The numbers are getting twisted in my brain. It is a reduction of $111,124 from the current year budget, or 0.4%. Important to note about the current year budget, it did include a 15% cut to state operating aid. So while that reduction doesn't seem drastic, it is when you take into account that the current year budget already included a 15% cut. The actual cut that we did get in April 21 was 5%. I've included some information about SUNY Adirondacks historical total operating budgets. As you can see, we do continue to be good stewards of our resources. We expand and contract our budget as enrollment grows and declines. You can see our budgets were increasing for a few years in response to enrollment growth and have been decreasing. So the 21-22 proposed operating budget is approximately $1.6 million less than 19-20, what I would consider to be our last fully operational normal budget year. Some information about our grants. The 2021 proposed grant budget is just over $2.2 million. There is not a lot of change within that from the current year or the previous year. And so the total budget for SUNY Adirondack, inclusive of grants, is $32,710,420. As Dr. Duffy mentioned, the items that really have informed this budget are enrollment, personnel and benefits, funding sources, and a return to pre-pandemic operations. And we're going to talk about those just a little bit on the next few pages. Dr. Duffy spoke considerably about our enrollment projection. Here are the details for you. The 21-22 budget is based on 1,867 FTE. That is a 16.7% decline over the 2021 budget, but only about a 10% decline or 9% decline over the current year projection. So that has spread out over 2 years. I did give you a graphical pictorial about our enrollment over the past few years. As Dr. Duffy mentioned, it has continued to decline. Similar to our state and our national peers, and a lot of that has to do with the declining number of high school graduates, but clearly the sharp decline is COVID related. There is good news and good information related to enrollment. There is significant opportunities to bring students back to college who need financial support. We have the ability through the federal stimulus package to offer over $7 million in aid to students that are interested in returning to school. And we are actively communicating those opportunities through several marketing strategies. But that is a significant infusion of money to assist students. Some information about our operating revenues. I generally try to share this with you. We have student revenue, sponsor contribution. Thank you for that. Our chargebacks, some small amounts of out-of-state tuition, our state revenues or our state aid, and then our other revenues. And I've included for you comparisons to our peer community colleges. With respect to tuition and fees, as Dr. Duffy mentioned, we are always committed to open access. We do remain one of the most affordable community colleges in the New York State system. And to further assist our students in achieving their educational goals, this year we froze tuition and we have eliminated 3 student fees. We are very grateful for our sponsor support. It does fall below the peer average, but we make up for that in chargebacks. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit at the very end. State aid, the state did appropriate the greater of $50, a $50 increase per FTE, or 98% of the 2021 approved base aid. And we are appreciative of the recognition of the floor that we've been talking about for several years. But I will say for me personally, it's disappointing that it's at 98% of the lowest amount of state aid that we've received in quite some time. It allocates out to an $18.6 million cut to New York State's community colleges, and SUNY Adirondack bears about $130,000 of that. So while we're certainly on the right path by recognizing the floor, if we could get that floor raised a little bit, that would certainly be more appropriate. The other revenue number is high this year because that's where we have included the federal relief funds that we have received. So that includes just over $2 million in federal relief funds to offset expenses associated with the coronavirus, as well as lost tuition revenue due to that sharp decline in enrollment. The next page is just a pictorial about New York State historical state aid, and I don't want to drive the point home too much, but it has declined significantly since 2014, 2015. It's a cumulative loss of 13.4% or $64 million. So that is a challenge to New York State's community colleges as we try to continue to not just balance our budget, but to invest in the neediest students in the system and to make sure that they can succeed at their educational goals. Some information about the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. We all know what that was for. It was to help colleges prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. This is a significant infusion of funding. However, it is one time. It is very highly restricted. I've attended several of your meetings virtually, so I know yours is restricted as well, and you're experiencing those same things. So is ours. It has federal and state guidelines and restrictions. Our independent auditors must approve all of our allocations. And some of those restrictions include that the funds can't be used to increase the chargeback rate at all, and they can't be used for any pre-enrollment recruiting activities. In addition, there are some aggressive spending deadlines for these funds, and they most likely can't be used for significant capital investments. I've provided for you a total of those funds available to students and directly to the institution. And in total, between students and the institution, it is just over $16 million, which is wonderful. And again, a nice one-time opportunity for both students to return to college and for the college to be able to invest in the things that it needs to remain able to respond to a public health crisis. Bit of information about our operating expenditures. I do break them out by function, as we should. The college invests significantly in instruction, academic support, and student services. That is the core and the heart of our business. We, as always, continue to monitor our institutional support or our administration, and we continue to invest in maintenance of plant to reduce our long-term deferred maintenance. That was a goal in the current strategic plan. We've been very successful at it, and we're trying to continue to do that going forward. In addition, our rent is in there for some of our facilities. We will be fully open for fall 21, so we did have to account for that in this upcoming budget. Also, important to note about personnel and benefits. We did have to make difficult personnel-related decisions this year, but we were able to do so in a way that didn't reduce our investment in any one area in a greater percentage than the other. So our spending on instruction as a percentage of the entire budget has remained level. Same with student services, et cetera. And so there wasn't one area of the college that we had to reduce at a higher level than others. And in addition, we for next year, for the first time, are able to budget about a $600,000 savings in benefits as a result of some of the strategic initiatives that we've been implementing over the last 3 years. That included moving our retirees over to a fully funded college-run Humana Medicare plan, self-insuring our benefits, implementing a wellness program for employees, and several retirement incentives for faculty. As it relates to our fund balance, this budget does not appropriate any fund balance within next year's budget. We do have those federal relief funds that we are using instead. So we do not anticipate using any fund balance next year. We did have a one-time increase in the fund balance at the end of the 2019 fiscal year, mostly as a result of that pause in on-campus operations. So spending was sharply reduced, especially in relationship to the information that we were getting about potential significant reductions in state aid and those holdbacks in state aid that we were experiencing. We sharply reduced costs. We were in a remote environment, and that resulted in us putting some money back into the fund balance for that year. But again, that was a one-time increase in the fund balance. In addition, our board does have a board designated fund balance to act as a cushion for that self-insurance of our health insurance. And I know Warren County at least has that as well. So there is an understanding of what that is. Excuse me. This is really the last page that we generally share with you. It's the budget parameters page. So it talks about state aid, our budgeted FTE. But the section that Warren and Washington County are usually most interested in is the proposed sponsor contribution. We did budget for a 2% increase in sponsor contribution. For Warren County, your investment would be $2,130,466, a $42,000 increase over the current year. Washington County's investment would be $1,581,680, or a $31,000 increase over the current year. We did provide some information about your contribution and about chargebacks and how it impacts that and how that works. And I will just kind of summarize for you here on this final page where the money at the college comes from and how your contribution contributes to that. So students make up about 32% of our total revenue, state aid about 26%. The revenue from our sponsors makes up about, 12%. And the revenue from our non-local counties or our chargebacks makes up about 13% of our total budget. The way the chargeback calculation works, your investment is what directly enables us to charge back to those other counties that send students to SUNY Adirondack an amount basically equivalent to what you contribute per student who attends SUNY Adirondack. And so that is at this point a very significant portion of our budget. If the two sponsor counties were to approve a budget with a 0% increase for even just 1 year, it would have an $800,000 cumulative impact over a 5-year period on the college, even if you went back to doing 2% increases in future years. So a 0% for even 1 year is very, very significant to that chargeback dollar amount that we charge back to every other county that sends a student to SUNY Adirondack. In addition, those counties do pay the capital chargeback as well. That helps us keep up our campus and invest in our capital operations. In closing, obviously the college's mission is to provide an outstanding academic experience for its students, and that's even more critical during this period of economic recovery. We continue to help local health care providers address the shortage of nurses, support like local high school students who wish to begin their higher education without leaving home, assist our mid-career local residents who've lost their jobs, master new skills so they can return to the workforce, and provide our local companies with specialized training for their employees so they can compete more effectively in a post-COVID world. We hope that you'll recognize that as well and approve this proposed budget. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Anne Marie, great report. So first question, the chargeback rate is that the highest it's ever been?
I believe it is, Brian.
Okay, and the last time we decreased was when you had to recover your fund balance, which was necessary and turned out to be even more necessary for what would lie ahead. Is that increase is more than that, probably decrease from that even, right?
Off the top of my head, I would have to say yes.
Yeah, because I think this is the highest chargeback rate we've had. But that's the thing that lowers it also is when you add fund balance or when we take away money.
It is. Yes.
Okay. So just a couple of things to add. The new floor that you've got, something you always wanted was a floor, but the floor is so damn low it doesn't help you a lot. It's just better than having a ceiling.
Dr. Duffy is very good at discussing this, and
We call it the basement, Brian, but it's better than, below that. So
I can relate very well to milk prices. We never got a floor when we should have. And so now there is no floor. And when the bottom drops out, it drops out.
Yeah. But the good news is I can't say it enough, though. And I know it's not what we wanted, but the acknowledgement, and actually this really came from many, many legislators during the budget process when it was not stated in the governor's budget, and it was the legislators that brought it back to the table. And we're grateful for that because it at least is acknowledging that when we're funded on an FTE, as you saw in Anne Marie's chart, we're so subject to enrollment fluctuations when, of course, many of our fixed costs don't change, just like And so at least we feel, the community college presidents feel optimistic about the opportunity to come back and have this conversation going forward about being able to raise the investment in the community colleges.
So the question is then whether they raise the floor a little every year or do they take an opportunity and decrease it on you?
Well, Brian, I'm trying to be,
doesn't mean they don't move it the wrong direction.
I'm trying to be optimistic.
Yeah, well,
I
appreciate that. I'm an optimistic
I'm the
person
pessimist on the team, Brian. Dr. Duffy is the optimist.
So good. That's good. It's a nice mix. The only other thing I would add was on your capital investments and your federal money, stimulus money that you said you probably couldn't use. The one thing that I think you probably can do, and we're looking at it here too, is because of the air quality and air handling, heating and cooling systems are a big deal. And those can turn into major upgrades that are necessary that maybe you wouldn't do right now, but you do them because the money's available now. So I just wanted to put that in your mind, not that you didn't already have it.
Appreciate that. We are planning several of those, and SUNY System Administration did reach out to the Department of Education and obtain clarification that the funds could be used for that, even though on our end they're considered capital. What we're still not clear on is whether or not the state of New York will match that like they usually do for a capital project.
Of course they will. I'll turn on my Chris Duffy optimism.
I know. I ask every single week on my weekly business officer call, and every week I hear that we don't know yet. So there's also some significant technology investments that will qualify for that funding that technically would be considered capital in our world usually as well, but those do qualify also.
Excellent. Great job. It was a great information session.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? It's difficult to see all the boxes when I'm sharing my screen.
Anne Marie, I don't have anything in the chat, just a question, regarding the presentation, and it was emailed to each of the clerks that if they haven't already, they'll be sharing with their constituents.
Anne Marie, I have a question or a comment.
Okay.
All of us that have managed public budgets through this period, I think understand the challenge that y'all were facing throughout the year. And including the question of how to handle what might be one-time funding, right? In other words, you always have to be wary of that cliff effect down the road and how you budget relative to that and the strategy that you use. And I'm sure you're running all kinds of what-if scenarios associated with that. But it seems to me that one of the metrics you put up that you're not having to access your fund balance for this coming year, I judge that as a very good metric going forward, because as you run some of these what if scenarios, you know, some of them get dire, right? So maybe you could just kind of talk to that a little bit about what might be 1 or 2 year one-time revenue and your sense of how your revenue streams are restoring themselves. Like in Warren County, for example, a number of our key revenue streams have restored themselves to, you know, acceptable levels, let's put it that way. So the impact that we might have been expected early in the COVID, we didn't materialize, but that's good news, right? How about on your end? What could you talk to that a little bit, Anne Marie?
Sure, I will try, and Dr. Duffy can jump in with anything that I missed. So important to note about this budget, we are not allocating any fund balance, but it does include $2 million in stimulus funds to cover lost revenue. So the college worked very, very hard to reduce expenditures. We made difficult decisions that have not been made in as long as I can remember in the college's history. So there were many employees that were with us last year that won't be with us next year unless enrollment rebounds and we can call some of them back. So the college is working very hard to reduce its expenditures, but still does have a $2 million gap technically in this budget that we're covering with those stimulus funds that were intended to cover some lost revenue in the community college system, because there is an understanding that students just couldn't return to campus, to their education, to school. So we are planning what I call the 3-year recovery period. And it seems that SUNY System Administration is also planning a 3-year recovery period. So I anticipate that that's about how long it's going to take us to fully bounce back. Our enrollment projections for fall are very, very conservative, but they are based on very good data as well. So I don't anticipate we'll fully rebound next year. I think that our recovery period will be much slower than what you're seeing in the rest of the community, just because I think it's different. Returning to college is a significant commitment. And I think that the recovery in the community will probably happen at a little bit faster of a rate than people are able to make that time commitment to return to college. I do think, though, that for those students that can do it, now is the time. There has never been this amount of aid available to help students achieve their educational goals. And so now is really the time for anyone that is considering advancing their education to do so and to take advantage of that funding. So we will be fully open, as Dr. Duffy mentioned, and we are actively and very excitedly waiting for students to return in the fall. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and I think so. A lot of what you mentioned on the expenditure side is reflected in the size of your total operating budget. I think that reduction is probably reflective of those difficult decisions.
It is.
Anne Marie, this is Al from Washington County. How are you?
Hi, Al. I'm well, thanks, except for the sore throat.
One quick question. I noticed that the increase for both counties is exactly 2%. Does that mean that you did not see any shift in enrollment county by county?
So Eric did calculate that, and that is correct. So it's the first time that we have seen that.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Does that mean we're equally as bad? Is that what you're telling us?
You're equally as good, Brian.
I thought you were the pessimist in this deal.
Brian, we need to talk. I gotta shift here.
Dr. Duffy's worn off on me a little bit. I can at least keep my pessimism in check.
Hey, so one more question here where Mr. Conover went. So the one-time money from the stimulus, is there any way to incorporate any of that in another year? Because you have 3 years to use it. Is there some of that still going to be available or not? I guess that's a good follow-up for me.
I think the answer to that is yes, absolutely yes.
Because that keeps you from using fund balance again another year, hopefully.
As long as it allows us to spend it over that time period, yes, we would reserve some for that. I'm still not entirely clear on, I'll just go back to, just so that everyone can see it. This last bucket, the American Rescue Plan Act, this is the newest bucket of funding available. And the guidance has continued to change about that bucket, just as it did the other buckets. So it will continue to change about how long we have to spend it for. But clearly the college would reserve some for lost revenue in the following year as well, as long as that will fit into the spending deadlines.
And that only happens if enrollment stays down. If for some reason enrollment went way up, you would probably run out of availabilities for some of the uses of that money and you'd probably never get it.
Oh, no, we will spend the money.
Oh, no. We'll spend it. Don't worry.
You do have, okay. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't ways that you couldn't use it because sometimes
I
that
wanna
happens here too.
Yeah, I want to follow up on Ron's question. You know, the other plans that we're making, of course, is looking at what can we invest in. So, you know, even to your point about HVAC systems, that's one thing, but of course, technology infrastructure. And again, what we've learned through COVID is having more flexible ways for students to engage in their learning will require us, and we're already in the process, of course, getting ready for the fall, and that will continue to evolve. And we all know technology infrastructure is not cheap, but we're also mindful, because you made this point, and it's a very good one, that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we've invested in something that then we can't maintain down the road. So it's a tricky balance, but we've, of course, consulted with our faculty and academic leadership specifically to look at ways that we can allocate these dollars that we've never had before in investing in the classroom and in the instruction methodologies, not all about technology either. So we've got a giant list that we're collecting of different things and ideas that people have on what we can invest in. And then as the guidance becomes clearer, we'll parse that out as we can.
It also includes the ability to offer remote services to students as well. All of those wraparound services like tutoring and counseling. So it's not just direct instruction in the classroom. So there are a lot of opportunities for us to be able to spend this money.
And nothing stopping us from allocating some of our institutional portion to students. We can do that as well. So, yeah, I remind Emery of this all the time. Don't worry, we'll spend the money. We just want to spend it right. And we don't want to jump in too quick when the guidance is still sort of in flux.
Yeah, that's the same thing we're seeing at the county level. And
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned investment. It was the same discussion I had with our administrator just before the meeting started. It's a time where there's lots of money out there. This is more money than our counties or the SUNY Adirondack have ever seen, but it's one-time money. And what's going to be important is that we strategically invest. We talk about being a poor county or not as rich as some counties. That's somewhat by our own design. If we invest wisely, we now have markets open to us that were never open before because we didn't have certain opportunities and availability, where now with everything online, everything is open to both our counties and throughout. And we have opportunities like we've never seen before. And if we can invest in the right areas, we have an opportunity here that we need to seize. Yep. And hopefully we can get there, especially together collectively,
yeah.
All of us.
Yeah, there might be ways that we can continue to have conversations as the three entities to do some collaborative investment, that's something we'd be very open to as well. And, I'll put my continued optimistic hat on, and even though there's some hurdles to climb, but, the Biden administration is very warm to community colleges. It's been explicitly stated over and over again. And in fact, the infrastructure bill that's being discussed right now has an allocation of $12 billion for community college, specifically community colleges infrastructure, meaning capital to some degree. We've never had that sort of attention at the federal level. So, I keep saying it's our turn. I'm going to turn that into the biggest hashtag, but it's our turn to have the investment at the federal level in the community college structures across the nation. And it's at least there and it's being discussed. How that all plays out, who knows? But the fact that we're even at the table, so to speak, is really exciting for community colleges.
Very good.
Hey, Brian, I'd like to move the proposal of the budget out of finance to the full board for approval.
Okay, moved by Matt Hicks. Do I have a second?
Second by James.
Seconded by James Griffiths. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye from Washington County.
Aye.
So moved.
Aye.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, from Warren County, do we have anyone would care to move this forward?
Do you want me to take a motion out of personnel first to move it to finance?
Be my guest.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Can I have a motion from personnel?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Supervisor Conover, second by Driscoll. All those in favor to move the budget to finance?
Aye.
Please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries.
Okay, do we have a motion to move this to the full board?
I'll move it. This is Peter.
And I can second Frank.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Claudia. We have a motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? No opposition? We're all set.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate your support. Anne-Marie, did you have anything else you wanted to update the group?
The only last thing that I wanted to update this group on was our facilities master plan. So as you may remember, the college was engaging in an update to our facilities master plan, or a new revised facilities master plan. And we were doing that work pre-COVID. We did put it on hold or paused it as a result of COVID, mostly because our campus community's focus was elsewhere. We had a lot on our plates, but in addition, we wanted the opportunity to consider how COVID was going to impact the campus long-term, all those things that we've just talked about, ways to reach students remotely going forward. And so we wanted an opportunity to consider that before we finalized that master plan. The group did pick up that work again this spring and will be prepared to present to you in the fall, as well as our Board of Trustees and the campus community, an updated facilities master plan for the campus. So I just wanted you to know where that stood and when you could expect to see something from us on that. And that was really the only other update I had, Dr. Duffy.
Great, thank you. And with that, I think we've provided you with what we intended to share today. Again, we're appreciative of all of your time and of course your support of the college and our students and the campus community. So thank you. And again, open to any questions, and otherwise we can wrap up.
I'll take a motion to adjourn personnel. Thank you, Supervisor Conover, second by Supervisor Driscoll. Bye, guys.
Motion to adjourn for the Finance Committee, moved by Supervisor Bruno and seconded by Supervisor Bramer. All in favor? Or adjourned?
Aye.
Hey, Sue, sorry I didn't have you move that to finance. We were a joint meeting, so I wasn't thinking about that. But Didn't mean to overstep my bounds.